Welcome to The Alternative Investor. Much has changed during the COVID-19 pandemic. The range of potential investment vehicles available to investors found itself in a state of flux. Despite the fact that many investors are looking for new opportunities, there has been a global dearth of IPOs as new companies have found cheaper alternatives in the form of private equity. Well, 3 years ago, the arrival of Zarx for Africa Exchange, A2X markets and the like was seen as a welcome change for the capital markets in South Africa. The question is, how have they fared during the COVID-19 pandemic? To help answer that question, we're joined by Etienne Nel, who's the CEO of Zarx. Etienne, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Nastasia.
So let's look back at the year that was for Zarx. I can imagine, the COVID-19 pandemic may have added a bit of a spin on things.
Yes, it was not business as usual, but being a fintech, we were able to leverage of technology quite effectively, and as a result, we were able to do our first transfer of listing from the JSE across to Zarx in April, in fact, of a company called Orion Real Estate, which is a REIT. So it was it ticked a couple of firsts for us. I do believe it's one of the first listings during lockdown. We did it on a virtual Zoom type meeting, had virtual shareholders attending and so on and so forth, which was massively successful. And so year to date, we've managed to conclude 2 listings. And if all goes to plan, we should kick off next year with 2 to 3 listings Q1. So, we certainly haven't been resting on our laurels. But as you correctly point out, times have become quite tough for companies to list, and they are pretty much mostly opting for the perceived easier option of going private equity.
Since your launch, when you look at the benchmarks you may have set for yourself or the targets you may have set for yourself and the team, are you on track with those targets or perhaps slightly behind?
Truth be told, we're slightly behind. A couple of things, a couple of headwinds, obviously, that were completely unforeseen. So, we had to change quite a bit of legislation. Initially, we thought that it would be fairly simple to list REITs, as an example. It turned out not to be the case. It took us 2 years to change the legislation. On the back of that delay, we lost 3 listings that initially indicated they wanted to raise capital on Zarx. And similarly with inward listings, we had to engage extensively with the South African Reserve Bank, and ultimately exchange control regulations were updated, but these things took time, and as a result also cost us new listings. But I think Michael Jordan put it really well the other day, where he said that typically regulated fintechs take 2 years to get the license, which is exactly what happened with us, 3 years to gain traction, which is exactly on par with our timeline, and then another 3 years to bulk up. And that's exactly where we're at. So 2021 certainly by current accounts is going to kick off with a bang for Zarx.
When you look at the competition within the local markets, how does it fare right now? When you all launched yourself, 4AX and the like, there was a lot of, welcome in terms of what you would be bringing into the local market, considering that the JSE had been a monopoly at the time. Now, when you look back, what has that competition done to our local markets right now?
Competition, I think, has been net positive for capital markets. It's certainly given companies more choice. and what it has done is it's forced the exchanges specifically to sharpen their pencils and be on the front foot, both from a client service perspective as well as a technology and an operating model perspective. So, a lot of people always think that the net result of competition is lower pricing. That certainly is a component of it, but ultimately, what competition does, it drives new ideas, better client service, and a better offering to capital markets as a whole. And I think in the sort of intervening 3 years since we all started, what has happened, it's become quite clear where the various niches are. So, A2X are certainly focusing on secondary listings, and they've have had quite a bit of success there. We're focusing specifically on primary equity listings, and we're still going ahead with listing unit trusts. And then 4AX seem to be gyrating more towards debt and corporate debt, and we're not even in that space. So I think everybody's finding their niche, and that's good for the market.
Is there still an inherent conservatism when it comes to, sharing the benefits of listing as a form of raising capital?
Yes and no. Ultimately, when a company is looking for capital, most of the time stakeholders are looking for the best possible deal. We've found that the level of education that we need to convey into the market and explaining to people that listing on Zarx is simpler, better, cheaper, and faster, to coin a phrase, is that's been a big part of the job, is to educate the market. Once you pass that hurdle, people realize that listing on Zarx, in terms of your continuing cost of obligation, it can be up to 60-70% cheaper than the alternatives.
Your take on the, the regulatory market, you touched a little bit on it in your previous answer. Perhaps you can give us an assessment of what's your take on it.
Well, obviously, regulation is a living, breathing thing, and our regulators have done a superb job of managing the change. But certain things that I think are going to be fundamental in capital markets specifically is something like blockchain, for example. And, so that we've engaged extensively with the South African Reserve Bank, who are on the cutting edge of blockchain technology and finding ways to leverage that. And ultimately, what it does, it reduces cost and to an extent your settlement risk. So we in South Africa have a very well regulated capital market space, and the rate of change, I would imagine, would only accelerate in the near future, and our guys are certainly on the front foot where that's concerned.
Etienne, thank you so much for your time. That is Etienne Nel, who is the CEO of Zarx. That's it from me. Yeah.